I hope this is working, so I guess I'm just going to go ahead and record something. Well, anyway, what's up, everybody? My name's Matt. I am here to record a video, I guess. Basically, what's happening here? What I'm doing here is I'm going to be sharing some information on some hair cutting. If you don't know me, I'm the kind of person who loves to do like experiments in hair and I hope this is working, so I guess I'm just going to go ahead and record something. Well, anyway, what's up, everybody? My name's Matt. I am here to record a video. Giving us audio, but no video. That's awesome. Hang on. What I'm doing here is I'm going to be sharing some information on some hair cutting. If you don't know me, I'm the kind of person who loves to do like experiments in hair and to try new things in ways that challenge the way we normally like to navigate activities like hair cutting, hair color, all that sort of stuff. So, if you're okay, working out some details here. I'm not really sure why it's not showing us our video. Okay. Alrighty, I think this is going to work out, so let's try this out again. What's happening here? What? Okay, friends, here's the raw stuff. So I guess I'm just going to go ahead and record something. Here we go. Anyway, what's up, everybody? My name's Matt. I am here to record a video, I guess. Basically, what's happening here? What I'm doing here is I'm going to be sharing some information on some hair cutting. if you don't know me, I'm the kind of person who loves to do like experiments in hair and to try new things in ways that challenge the way we normally like to navigate activities like hair cutting, hair color, all that sort of stuff. So if you're a graduate of our Paul Mitchell schools or you have certified in our Paul Mitchell Pro hair cutting system, a lot of what I have to share with you is going to sound super familiar, and that's cool. We're going to be looking at a haircut that may be known to you as a graduation that is triangular, or in other words, triangular graduation. What does that mean for us? Well, basically we're going to be navigating a doll head, this one to be exact, and we're going to be working with a haircut that has a range of elevation from almost nothing all the way up to something in the realm of almost being a layer. We're going to be navigating this with a particular sectioning pattern that I wanted to try out just to see what would happen and how it would support making my way through the haircut. So what we're going to do to start things off here is, rather than having this doll head separated into 4 standard segments where we have that center division line going all the way down the back, what we have here is a mastoid division line that goes from apex to mastoid on both sides, and then another division line that runs horizontally from mastoid process to occipital to mastoid process on the other side. I'm going to be starting this haircut with horizontal sections with the idea that I want to begin this with a nice strong foundation. I want to support a haircut that begins with almost no over direction, for the purpose of having a nice clean outline to begin things with a really strong reference for when I begin to implement some elevation and some over direction. So starting with horizontal sections, rather than continuing up in that manner, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the corner of the hairline here almost like it's a point where I'm going to pivot off of, if you will, where we'll go from horizontal to horizontal diagonal forward to vertical diagonal forward until we finally reach vertical sections. And the idea behind why I want to try this is I want to see if this could be a great way to prevent having any holes in the haircut that people are used to seeing when they operate with simply using diagonal forward sectioning. So I want something that's going to support a consistent outline so that while it works its way around the neck here, we have a strong shape that then immediately begins to drop down. So let's see what happens. Follow along.
Okay, so let's talk for just a sec here. Pull this back up. We are going to this video capture. Show me. No? Okay, let's try that again. Duplicate. Doop. And hi, here I am. So basically, the whole idea with this haircut is I had this thought while I was going for a walk the other day, and you know, with so many people who come through our schools, go to salons, the different classes, I've had the chance to go and facilitate. There's this concept that I hear a lot called like the Paul Mitchell way, and I want to express that this was kind of a thought experiment on what the Paul Mitchell way may actually be, at least in my own mind's eye, because I don't necessarily see any one way as being the way. Even inside like the Paul Mitchell realms, I'm speaking as someone who, for the majority or like entirety of my career, I've worked with these systems, and I think the way that people talk about is really more so, it's dialogue, it's thought process, it's a reasoning mentality more so than it is a like a method of actually doing something. So this exercise is really all about how we can prove something as being a functional thought process rather than just limiting the idea to you have to do it with this exact process of sectioning, and it has to be over directed this exact way in order to fall a certain way, and these design lines have to exactly function in that like concurrent methodology. And I as an individual, I don't really think of things in that specific way. Like, I really love the fact that our systems really put people first rather than putting like the product of the education as the spotlight. It's you, the professional, or it's you, the future professional, or it's just this experience of being able to have a conversation or share an experience. And I just really like that. So getting back to the system itself, in our exercises, and we call them exercises because it's just like going to the gym. You know, like if I go to the gym and I'm going to do squats, I have to have good form, or I may hurt myself. I'm playing with a stretched out hairpin. So the exercise for triangular graduation starts off with these vertical diagonal forward sections, and from there you go to a pivoting from vertical diagonal forward to diagonal forward to horizontal diagonal forward to being almost completely horizontal in order to control the balance from back to front. And we do that in the exercise because it teaches our future professionals how to control, first of all, section angles, how to work with section angles that are going to change, and then it also gives us the chance to see how our section angle accuracy can really support the job that it's going to do. So like your more vertical sections are going to support higher ranges of elevation. Your more horizontal sections are going to support lower ranges of elevation. In much the same way that like if I was to visualize this as a section angle, this little like post-it note, whichever direction I put this ring on, it's going to determine which way it's going to roll. So like when I tilt that forward, the ring is going to slide forward. When I tilt it back, the ring will slide backwards. And if I keep it perfectly level, it should very well like sit in place. So like those horizontal sections are going to hold weight in one position. Your diagonal sections, depending on the way you have it falling or leading, it's going to lead the weight that direction for the most part. And you can change that with your finger angle, your elevation, your over direction. But if we minimize the amount of over direction, if we almost look at it as our main variable being section angle and finger angle, then the haircut very well will almost do itself. We just have to follow it along and trust the process. So that's kind of what this was an exercise in. So we're going to get back to it. I'm going to pull up the next video and see what we got. Alright, so we're spraying things down, getting ready to work in the back. You can see with this haircut, we began with a segment towards the nape below the occipital bone, going from occipital to mastoid process on both sides. So the first section in the haircut was a horizontal one. We did a horizontal section so that I could establish where the length was going to build from. This particular one, I chose a length that was a little shorter than where we kind of land for things like certification standards and stuff like that. As a learning leader, I just wanted something nice and tight, and to see what kind of impact it would make if I switched from a traveling guide to a stationary guide. So, had a little trip up on controlling the hair. It happens. It's normal. Okay. So I'm just going to bring everything down. No tension, no elevation. Cut it where it lives, right in the middle of the neck. So for anyone curious, this right there was just a simple exercise in a square one length to get our guide started. We're going to take a couple more little moments to groom the hair, knowing that I'm about to go in with some pivoting sections. I went ahead and separated everything left side from the right side. So here you can see the section angles as they're going to pivot. The idea here is that our first section will begin to introduce a little bit of tension and elevation here. So I'm going to pick this hair up, and then after this has been cut, we'll move into a little bit more of a diagonal, like a true diagonal section. It's at this point that we really have to move around the head shape, and as it begins to get a little bit more vertical, you'll see it get to where it's almost entirely vertical right here at the masseter process division line, or indentation, and it's going to become fully stationary at that point. Alright, here we go. So you can see the first section. It's a little dark, but it's there. One thing I like about the exercise itself that this was adapted from is that if you can pretty well control everything from the start, you can sometimes get away with not using clips to control it, but beginning everything with horizontal diagonal forward sections, using a clip is pretty much a have to do rather than sometimes you have to. This is the section where I could really feel like section angle influencing the cutting line. And I wanted to be very intentional with how I controlled this area, because if I accidentally pulled too far to the original section, or if I elevated too much, then it might start to look a little too layery. So I'm still keeping it pretty low. Keeping the elevation as near consistent as I can, gradually getting a little bit higher, a little bit higher, a little bit higher as we move along, and try not to cut too far into a section before I recomb it in front of my second knuckle. So you can see now we're starting to pivot into more of like that slightly more vertical diagonal section. There it is. So this is the spot. This is usually where like people get tripped up, right here in the corner of the hairline. If your finger angle guides you a little bit more straight through here, it's not a bad thing, it's not a good thing, it's just a thing, right? So what I like to do is I'll use a bit of a heavier cutting line, a little bit more horizontal, so that I can build a stronger structure through this space, and it'll support a more drastic drop off in length once this gets past that corner of the hairline. are almost vertical, and you can see how that slight bit of over direction needs to be paired with a heavier finger angle to support this particular graduation. If I start going a little too lean, I'm gonna say like with a more vertical diagonal cutting line, then it starts to fall a little too feathery. You kind of start to lose some shape in it, and that strength starts to disappear. Okay, coming in, cross-checking, making sure my elevation was consistent and my over direction was on point, and I like what I saw, so we're going to continue into the haircut. We are now beyond the corner of the hairline, so I'm kind of feeling things out, trying to decide, do I want to start switching to an overhand hand position, which I honestly I decided against it. I wanted to keep things as consistent as I could. So coming down, tilting my finger angle to drive that weight down towards the chin. There we go. All right, next clip. Starting things over on the other side. Before we get any further, we want to finish this entire segment out. Big key thing for me, if I feel like I'm taking a little extra time with a haircut, is I am incessant with spraying. I have a buddy who I used to work with while we were in Nashville who used to like to joke around and say, if I could dunk or dump a bottle of, or a bucket of water on someone's head, then I would do it. So I'm not quite as spirited. This first section, I'm seeing that it's not quite wide enough to continue on. So I'm just kind of revisiting section width and getting my control right with the section angle. A little hard to see right here, but I'm horizontal diagonal forward. I'm cutting in a shadow. Good stuff. So on this side of the haircut, I tend to be a little bit more intentional about whether or not I'm going past my second knuckle. I don't have particularly long fingers, and that said, I still even like to break it down a little bit further. I find if I go too far past my second knuckle here, I just lose tension. And I'm the kind of person who likes to be able to relax through what I do. Not really too high strung when it comes to cutting hair. It's really almost kind of therapeutic for me. So any way that I can find to relax while I'm working on it, I'm going to do it. Case in point here, if I can resist going past my second knuckle and trying to squeeze my hand too tight, then I'm going to stay right where I am. Our pivoting has proceeded. We're now more of a true diagonal at this point. Okay, so one thing I've noticed is that I pulled back too much. My lower body position did not support the shape I was creating and wound up a little too drastic. So what I'm going to do is go back into the original section, and I've taken a half step forward on that side just so I can reassess things. And what I can see is that because I was standing too far towards center back, it just got a little long on the right side. Typically, this is actually not my bad side, but any side can be rough if you don't move around the head the way you need to. And what I mean by that is, like so often we have people who behind the chair, they get comfortable standing behind their guest and lock their feet into position just in that one space. And if you do that, of course, everything is going to start to feel like you are compressing everything into one little area. So because of that compression and that over direction, it's gonna fall forward really long. So in order to be a little bit more consistent here and respect the exercise I adapted this from, I've got to go back in and adjust my lower body position and shift my feet with the section angle as I go. So you'll see that the correction has almost been completely made at this point. I've got a couple more sections to go before I can tell for sure. And there it is. So watch for that section angle or that cutting angle. So we've got a little bit of length right there. But it looks like I was okay with it, so we're moving on along. Now, part of my cross-check with this is that I wanted to see that the graduation at the top of this segment was a similar length to what it was building into, that it wasn't too drastic at this point. But moving into our next segments, you're going to see a lot more over direction. So to work with the fact that my control had me going left segment, right segment, I chose in the next segment to swap from beginning it on the left side of the haircut to beginning it center back and then moving to the right. This is a pretty fun little part of the challenge. Being that my fingers are not 5 miles long, I had to break the sections down into subsections. So controlling the bottom part of the section, cutting that where it needs to go, using a little bit of it as a reference to continue into the top half of the section, and then making sure that had the right over direction. It was fun. I won't lie, I very much enjoyed this. So there I go. Twist it up, put it out of the way, and get started with cutting that shape in. This one was big about just nailing that cutting line. There you see it. Fell right into place. Gonna have a nice strong line of graduation on this one. So I've seen some conversation around this concept in haircutting about elevation and graduation being internal or external. I'm gonna make a statement that is based on experience and not based on what anyone has trained me to think. It's just what I assume with context. And if you experience otherwise, definitely correct me for sure. So, elevation, if it's external, to my understanding, is based on gravity. It's based on natural fall. Elevation referred to as internal, is based around the head shape. So in this particular case, we have a shape that is a little heavier, and my elevation I'm going in with is meant to be treated as more of an external graduation based on how the hair naturally falls working through the exercise. So I'm working with vertical sections at this point. I've done all of my pivoting, working from horizontal diagonal forward, moving up into more of a vertical section, and coming into segment 2, I've got a vertical section with a tilted cutting line, keeping my elevation relatively low to support the work that we're doing here. There we go. Now I've got my guide set for this segment. So what's happening now is we're moving a little bit more like clockwork. And this is what it's all about, like getting your preparation in, getting your sectioning done, cross-checking every couple of sections. You have all that in place, you can pretty effectively get through anything as long as you're consistent with it. That's the key. Consistency over time. So this time in this segment, you'll notice right at the get-go, I start to shift a little bit more in front of the lens. Part of the reason for this is that I want to be able to reach forward enough in order to get control of the section while still over-directing backwards enough. So my stance, what you can't see, my feet are split a little wide, with one foot being moved kind of off kilter very forward so I can push my weight forward, and then the other foot very far behind so I can then place my weight back in the middle or back on top of that foot. So I'm kind of balanced in between the two of them. Lean forward to create the section, pull it back, and then place my weight on that back foot when I'm ready to cut. Okay. All right, next clip, here we go. Okay, so still in that second segment, but now we're working towards the left-hand side. You hear me talking myself through this, like, I gotta remind myself how to do it. I find this, like, vertical approach, I really like coming into it with my fingertips pointed down. It's just a lot easier to see. Easier to see where you're coming from. You can tell where you're headed. Let it all rest in that lower body position. Boom, look at that graduation. Like, starts off heavy, builds up, works into the line of graduation. I was watching a clip from a friend and mentor, DJ, earlier today, maybe yesterday, could have been last night. I've slept since then. Anyway, A big point, you can see this in the video, is watch the angle and where my fingers are actually pointing. When I pull the hair backwards, in order to establish a really good graduation and a shape that's going to get longer towards the front, I want to create almost like an invisible V out of the cutting line and the shape of the head. So if the shape of the head is coming through like this, I want my cutting line to pop off the back of the head like this. If it gets too, if I elevate too much or I don't tilt my finger angle enough, then that V starts to lean out some and it'll start to soften out and sit more like a layer rather than graduation. So as I work my way towards those front sections, you'll see my elevation doesn't really change all that much, but my finger angle does. And the reason for that is when you get around that ear, you start to lose density. And in addition to losing density, from like how many hairs there are per square inch, you're also losing the fact that now you've got half as much hair to work with in the first place. So lower elevation, a heavier cutting line, it's going to support a stronger shape through here. If there was the same amount of hair, it would be way too heavy. But because there's less and you compensate for that with less elevation, it winds up feeling and looking a little bit more consistent. Alrighty, next clip. And the hair falls down. Alright, here we go. A little bit of water. Of course. Alright, you can start to see how that shape starts to build out. We've got it falling long to short. Wait, short to long. Let me forget how to talk for a minute. Okay, so at this point we've moved into vertical sections. And in addition to that, I'm supporting my cutting line. You're going to see it tilt out to where I go short to long and also short to long. So we're shortest in this area the closer I am to the masseloid process, and I'm longest as I make my way towards the parietal plate and the face. So it kind of has like a three-dimensional growth. The other thing about this, because the head does begin to curve at the parietal ridge, I'm going to create a horizontal division line, twist that up, pop it over the head, and now I can focus on vertical sections. This is what I was waiting on to see how this would operate. With triangular graduation in the exercise, we usually land in a more horizontal realm at this point. However, working with vertical sections, I wanted to lean into the approach from triangular layers a bit, so I worked with a stationary guide, pulled everything back to the masseloid process, and compensated for that in order to preserve graduation. I tilted my finger angle out more, so there it is. I think it's time for me to get some more lighting. All the way back, and just happened to grab some hair that I didn't need to grab. Okay, see that swing right into position. I love the way it just like right around the chin there. Okay, instinctually for something like this part of the haircut, we would want to elevate a lot higher, and we're up on top of the head. But don't want to do that, then we'll start to change the shape. We won't be respecting the technique in the first place. So what I'll do is I'm going to use an overhand hand position because it's higher up on the head. It's going to be easier on my shoulders. And then I'm cutting from short to long, working my way from the bottom up and tilting my finger angle out more so that it still sits more like graduation when it comes down. There it goes. Okay, last section on the left-hand side. And boom shakalaka. All right. I'm going to go ahead and move to our next clip here. Moving into the right-hand side. Well, it was ready to go already anyway, so that worked out. We're going to go ahead and spray it and get to controlling some hair. Okay. AC just kicked on if you hear that. Don't worry about it. Okay, getting this organized. We're going to still work with that horizontal division line right along the parietal ridge, and then from there we're back into vertical sections right in the temple. Honestly, I kind of like the way that looks. I could have just left it like that and been happy. Do some curls, little fluffiness, and texturizing spray, diffuse it, call it a day. Kind of reminiscent of a Chelsea. So this side's a little tricky. You've got to be mindful of that cutting angle. The further back I over direct, the heavier that line needs to get. There we are. Okay, that was said and done. Quick, like, that was good. I am into this. I think the next time I do one, though, I want to do an approach on maybe a pixie, maybe like some face framing. Huh? Okay. Elevation has to come down some, supporting some graduation, and then being very careful not to cut past that second knuckle, because we're kind of working the opposite of your general thought process. Rather than going short to long with our cutting line, we're going long into short. There we go. So you can see how like all that over direction did a lot to create an increase of length. And even though my finger angle was super like shallow, I still was able to manage a big drop off because of that stationary guide. All right. We're going to take a look at the basic shape where we're at so far. Looking at the back. This little side view here. Really into how this graduation just starts off nice and short. It builds up as we work up the head shape, also builds up as we work around the head shape horizontally. So let that continue. don't believe this clip has anything else worthy of note. I straight up just stepped outside to blow dry and then forgot to turn the camera off. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next clip. We're still... Oops. All right. Here we go. All right, so hair's been blow dried. And we are coming in to do a little bit of refinement. Scissors I'm using are the Mizutani Fit Beaks. I'm working on putting together like a kit list, so if you're curious about what I'm working with, that you can see what that's about. I'm pretty much an open book when it comes to this. I will tell you that most of what I get you can find on hairbrain.pro or pro.paulmitchell.com, or you can find it via YS Park, Mizutani. Just focusing on what the tips of the scissors can do for the most part. The belly of the blade itself is going to do most of the cleaning up as far as the bottom of the graduation goes towards the nape, and then popping in to do a little bit of scissor over comb to soften the line of graduation without knocking it out too much, because I'll be honest, I'm really into that. I like the shape, and how that built out was something that I was really hoping to see happen in the first place. So we're just doing a little bit of backwards over direction so I can see if there's any like bowing out to the cutting line itself, and there you go. Funny thing about this, and it was it's actually like slightly embarrassing. It did not occur to me that while I was working on this, there was going to be a class that wound up in the room. So the barber specialty barber theory popped in and started doing a little theory review in the middle of the class, or in the middle of the haircut, I should say. I was in the middle of their class. So we had a fun little conversation about some theory of electricity and things like that. Okay, just detailing the hairline using the tips of the scissors. If you're out picking some, one thing I just want to encourage is try to find something that has like a flat, like as flat a blade as you can get. And when I say that, I'm not talking about the edge itself. I'm talking about the actual like ergonomic shape of the scissor. So one thing I really like about this, and I picked up a tip on it from a couple of friends of mine who have been working with Mizutani for a hot minute. It's that if you have like a more narrow blade and a smaller tip, you can get into focus on those little details a little bit more, which is something that in the refinement phases with haircuts I used to really have a hard time with. Oh, what's up, Paul Mitchell banner? But yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. We're gonna see this is the final result. There you go. Hope you liked it. We'll see the next one as soon as I'm able. Have an awesome evening.